Well, hello, Richard, and hello to all of our learners all around the world. Thousands of people engaged in maintaining a mindful life. It's great to be with everybody.
Great to be with everybody. This is our first of the 4 feedback videos for the course.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's great to see already so many learners sinking their teeth into mindfulness, or many have been practicing for quite some time or done the introductory course. And it's great to read about, just the effect that it's having, being more mindful, but more accepting or less reactive, training the puppy, being gentle with ourselves, just being able to witness thoughts, sensations without getting caught up in them. A lot of really valuable insights there.
There's so much great stuff in the first week of this course, isn't there? I mean, you've just listed so many important things right there. We really jump in maintaining a mindful life. Jump straight in, feet first.
That's right. And of course, the formal and the informal practice go together. And that's the thing, maintaining a mindful life. It's not just sitting in a chair and meditating, once or twice a day. And so communications really come up as fertile ground. But just in terms of the formal practice, one of the learners getting really irritated by me leading a practice in listening, and so do I really have to listen to this guided practice while doing a listening practice? And I think it's great. Don't have the guided practice if you're comfortable to practice it without it. Because we don't want people to think, oh, I've got to have a guided practice. I can't listen and be mindful and present without having the guidance. The guidance is there just to give people enough of a feeling of what the practice is about. But practice independently, I think, is great. So don't be annoyed by my voice for the rest of your life.
But at the same time, I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because and the learner even sort of acknowledges at the end of their comment, like, maybe they need to learn to not react to your voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to be honest, Craig, you don't have the most annoying voice I've ever heard. So if there's some reactions taking place to that, that would be another way of practicing, wouldn't it? Just to work with that, like that guy is still talking. Hang on a sec. Am I reacting, judging, caught up in some story about this guidance? Maybe you could just be another sound happening in the environment. So maybe there's sort of 2 ways of working with this.
Yeah, maybe this wasn't a practice in listening at all. It was just a practice in helping people to deal with the waves of irritation.
You and I can be good at that sometimes.
Yes, but it was a very apt comment. Using or avoiding meditation practice to avoid difficult emotions was a very interesting insight this week.
It was, and some of our learners were sort of really found it very interesting when we're talking about how mindfulness really puts us in touch with what's really going on, and said that they noticed that they'd avoid meditating on days where, they were feeling, unpleasant emotions or things were tough. And that's a fantastic thing to recognize, because it's so often, mindfulness ironically can become an avoidance strategy, right? And we just want to focus on the breath rather than letting ourselves really feel what's there or notice what's really going on. And likewise, I see this all the time with clients. Sometimes people establish, a consistent meditation practice over a number of weeks, and it's getting really solid. And then they might come in for a coaching session. They say, you know what? Didn't meditate this week, don't really know what happened. And 9 times out of 10, if we start to dig, it's because something difficult is happening in their lives that they just didn't want to sit with. And so it's easier just to distract ourselves sometimes with TV or whatever we do, but to be able to stay present with whatever's going on, that's really at the heart of mindfulness practice. So it's very good that our learners have recognized that. And my encouragement to all of the people that know what I'm talking about here would be to stay with that discomfort, just lean into it. It doesn't have to be torture. You don't have to sit there and just, oh my God, don't make it a chore or a torturous thing, but just lean in a little bit to that discomfort. Stay a little bit longer with it would be my advice.
Yeah. And of course, always to remind people, totally in control of the process themselves. Practice what you're comfortable to practice. Go at your own pace. But there's so much value if we're willing to and open to sit with the things we find uncomfortable. Because it's a barrier when we think, oh, it's got to be easy, it's got to be totally relaxed, and sometimes just not like that. And mindful communication again has come up, easy one-to-one, but often difficult in groups, and especially around families. And there are so many automatic pilot and habitual modes of communicating when we get into families, which are habits that have accumulated very often over years, decades. And and it's not so easy, but sometimes, just to be mindful is, rather than trying to control people's responses and reactions and the frustration and irritation about that, is sometimes just sitting back and just watching, just noticing, and probably, people won't even notice if we're just sat back and just watching, but just getting curious, noticing the dynamic around the table. I remember somebody was speaking the other night, and this person was about 70 and very much into this kind of work. And he said he noticed something he'd never noticed before. For decades, the family would often gossip about, this or that other member of the family or whatever. And they often had these kind of gossiping, not really vindictive, but he said he'd never noticed in all these decades that his sister, or one of his sisters, never engaged in it. She always sat back. She would never gossip on, and he said he'd never noticed that in all those decades.
Suddenly he had a moment of mindfulness, just sitting back himself rather than being caught up in the drama of it all. And then someone else was doing the same thing.
Yeah, and when we do sit back and just watch, we don't only just notice more of what's going on around us, but more of what's going on within us as well, which is can be pretty informative too.
So sometimes it's just about sitting out and just not participating. I guess other times it's also okay just to have boundaries and just say, look, I'm not actually going to have this conversation. I'm not interested in doing this. So, but just to bring presence to it, because if we're not paying attention, of course, we get, as you said, caught in the default mode of gossiping and the status quo of whatever's happening in that moment. Then the awareness gives us a choice. Okay, maybe I sit out. Maybe I establish a boundary. Maybe I say no to this particular way of interacting. Or maybe I choose to engage in it, but with awareness now. And all of those things I think are fine, but the awareness is so important.
Yeah.
So important.
And so we don't want to be prescriptive, but just hopefully the awareness can help to inform people to make their own choices of how they want to engage. Yeah. Technology has been another issue that a number of...
Technology is always an issue in this course, Craig. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's such a big one. One of my learners made a really interesting comment, though. I mean, they sort of acknowledged that they might have been born back in the steam age, and while they were growing up, that they weren't even allowed to. I'm not sure if they didn't let themselves or if they weren't allowed to, read the newspaper while eating food. I mean, there was a very mindful life happening there, and so they found it hard to understand how a piece of technology could get in the way of being mindful. And so perhaps for some people that aren't digital natives, maybe it's easier to manage. I mean, you don't have a mobile phone, for instance, so you're obviously not getting caught up in using your phone while you're trying to do anything else. But I would imagine if a TV were on or there was something else happening, you'd be able to not get caught up in that. Whereas perhaps some people from the newer generations would find it really hard, and they do. The stats are really clear. They can't put their phones down. They are always doing one thing while they're doing something else.
Yeah, and it is possible to be mindful on the phone, on a Zoom call. The technology doesn't have to mean you can't be mindful if we're using it well. But for many people, doing other things and this compulsive or addictive desire to keep going to the technology at the same time, well, that's pretty divisive for the attention. And so it's interesting to develop some awareness around that, especially in the field of communication, because many people are communicating out of the corner of their mouth with somebody who's in the room with them while they're mindlessly scrolling their phone at the same time. Yeah. And not helpful in either regard.
No. And so mindfulness the awareness makes a difference, so we don't just keep habitually using technology in an unconscious way, but also having some limits and boundaries. Don't take your phone to the toilet, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I've told this story before, but I went to Tasmania a couple of years ago and drove around for 2 weeks in my van, and went to Cradle Mountain and all these just beautiful places. And I've deleted all social media from my phone. Like, I just don't want to have it on my phone, right? It's just, I don't want it there to distract me because it's designed to kind of hijack our attention. But I reinstalled the Facebook app just so I could post photographs of these beautiful places I was going. And within a day of putting the app back on my phone, what do you think was happening? I noticed myself sitting at the foot of this beautiful mountain in this forest next to a river, scrolling on my phone. I was like, oh my God, like, it's so addictive. So I deleted it again straight away. So sometimes we want to just put in those friction points or delete the apps. And sometimes it's enough just to have awareness. So we've really got to be honest with ourselves sometimes about that.
Yeah. Somebody asked you, how was Tasmania? I don't know. I'll open up my photos and have a
I
look.
better go and have a look on Facebook.
Looks beautiful. Good. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a mindful week between now and next week. Next week, we're going to be focusing on mindful relationships, compassion. So sort of, in a sense, some of these really important areas where mindfulness can really help to inform not just how we relate to ourselves, but to others as well.
Yeah.
So we look forward to everybody's input, and please follow Sherelle, who does some fantastic mentoring on these courses. And look forward to being with everyone next week.
See you all next week.